All right.
That's exactly how you started the last live, you know.
Really?
Right. I think you
Oh,
start every
gosh.
live like
All right.
that.
Welcome, everyone.
Hello, guys. Welcome to season 3, episode 6.
Yes.
Yeah, we've actually come a long way thinking about it from starting, having an idea of starting a podcast. Now
Right.
we're in season 3,
3. I know.
episode 6.
It's actually quite amazing.
It's quite a lot. So we've definitely done, I think, almost 30
Yeah,
podcasts in
yeah,
total.
that's an achievement.
Come a long way.
Celebrate the wins. Celebrate the wins.
Yes. So you might have been aware last month we had a amazing workshop. The turnout was so well. We had a lot of attendees, so many people sign up. And it was about wills. We spoke about the benefits of it, how it works, why you may need a will. And the turnout was good. We got a lot of feedback.
Yeah.
It was very engaging, very interactive. And it was just amazing, really, just to be able to help people and support people and let people have the opportunity to learn and realize, oh, maybe I need to take action now. And that's what kind of encourages us to continue doing what we do. We have decided that we're going to do workshops more frequently. So a month later, from the previous workshop, we are going to hold another one. So this will be on the 28th of November. And this workshop is about gifting large. So that could be about large assets, large sums of money, cash, properties, anything of a large substantial amount, and how to gift that. Because I'm sure, as we already know, when you gift over a certain amount or over the threshold, you can face some tax implications.
Yeah.
So we just would like to discuss that in our next workshop, just to let people know, especially if you have children. A popular topic we've seen is that a lot of people, the day that they do pass, they'd want their properties and their main home to go to their children. So you got to think about the most tax efficient and most wisest strategy to do that, so you don't get taxed as much and you can preserve that wealth and that property. You don't want your kids or your loved ones to go and start squabbling around, figuring out ways to pay off that inheritance tax for the property that you intended for them to keep, which they are unfortunately not able to. I feel like I'm talking a lot now.
No, it's good.
So yeah, that is our next workshop. And we're just going to cover some of the topics that we, not in significant amount of detail, but we're just going to cover some of the topics that we will be discussing in the workshop.
Yeah.
So to begin with, Richard, capital gains tax.
Yeah.
Would you like to talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, it's a big challenge for property owners. Maybe not so much for if you're main home, but if you're owning other properties as in your own name as a landlord and you want to make gifts. It's not just property that will trigger capital gains tax. Maybe I should explain what capital gains tax is. So when you own an asset, we're going to talk about land. It could be applying to shares, company shares, to heirlooms of certain value, jewelry, etc. Then if you purchased it or was gifted it at a certain value, let's say today at argument's sake, £1,000, and in 10 years' time it's now worth £100,000, and you made £99,999 worth of gain or increase in value. So naturally, you're going to get taxed on that increase in value. So we call that a gain. And when you gift it or sell the item, not most people think it's about selling only if you sell. If you actually make a gift, that's deemed as a disposal that will trigger a capital gains tax event. So the question now is, are you happy to pay it, especially now in the recent budget, as it's gone up, the value has gone up into the percentage, and most people haven't budgeted for that, or is there a more efficient way of preserving the wealth to gift to loved ones? And so what we want to talk about, and what the main problem is, especially for the main home, maybe not a capital gains tax for in all situations, but tax is a big element, okay, and how it would be triggered, and people are not really aware of that. And also, if you're a landlord and you're thinking of gifting property to loved ones, to children, that's a huge problem, because most landlords tend to have kept their houses for many, many, many years, and then they haven't factored in the cost of treating for capital gains tax. So we've got to look at ways of mitigating that or dealing with the situation. All right. So that's what a big challenge comes in for a lot of families, especially with property. But it can apply with its investments or shares.
Okay. So let's say I'm going to push it more to property. You want to gift a house to your child, but they already have a house. How does stamp duty play a part in that?
So stamp duty land tax in England, because there's a kind of variation of names in Wales, variation of a name in Scotland, but ultimately stamp duty land tax. Most people will pay it when they buy a house. It's triggered when you buying something of value and there's a consideration in return. So when you buy a house, but you get a mortgage that's in consideration in return. So that will trigger your tax on that. Okay, so stamp duty land tax, and it also can apply in the instance for people. Well, the big thing is when your main home. That's what we see it as a parent, and you probably heard from Deirdre in the hairdressing shop or bobbing down the pub like, oh, just gift it away, and you've reduced your inheritance tax liability. Don't worry about speaking to an expert. But people don't factor in the other challenges, and the main challenges are capital gains tax, which you mentioned, inheritance tax, and stamp duty land tax. And stamp duty land tax is not maybe direct to the person making the gift, but to the one receiving. Because if they already own property in their own right, then if the property value that they own is it increases to a certain amount, that could trigger a stamp duty event. And again, the last budget, that's now increased. So they pay a higher rate of stamp duty for owning more property. So that may not be something that they've budgeted for, but the parents like, oh, but I'm trying to reduce inheritance tax so my children can benefit. Now, in terms of generational wealth, that's probably the most efficient way of making a gift. So most people are not really aware of that. So stamp duty can be a big, big challenge. If you're a first-time buyer and you haven't owned a property yet and a parent's looking to make a gift to you, then stamp duty is not necessarily a huge problem, but it is because you're no longer deemed a first-time buyer once you have property in your name. Whether you've gone and purchased a house or you've been gifted land in your name, you've lost those rights as a first-time buyer. And so therefore, you will eventually, when you want to buy your own home to live in, whether it's with you or your spouse or partner, you're going to be paying a higher rate of stamp duty. So this is where it's a challenge. So we've got to be strategic and efficient when making gifts. And so the workshop will address more efficient ways of dealing with that.
Thank you, Richard. Also, a bit into the inheritance tax side of it, and also in regards to. Sorry, I'm just.
No. Yeah.
I'm just trying to understand a bit more about the inheritance tax side of the gifting. So,
what was the question? Sorry.
So, if you could expand a bit more, on the inheritance tax side of it.
Yeah, I mean, inheritance tax. It's an interesting tax. It's based on the transfer of wealth, predominantly upon a death event taking place. So, the only way to gauge it is always on a point in time. You can never predict it for the future because wealth will increase naturally just by nature of inflation. All right. So if you own assets, then if the value of those assets exceed a certain an amount, which I'd call an allowance or threshold, then if a death event took place, it would trigger potentially inheritance tax. Now, the allowance standard is £325,000. We call it a nil rate band. So any individual over the age of 18 will have access to that automatically. If you are a homeowner and you have a child or children, then you can claim an additional allowance, which we call a residence nil rate band. That's £175,000. So you got £500,000 allowance as an individual. Now, if you have assets, it's not easy, not hard, sorry, in down south to own assets up to £1 million plus. whether that's mainly the property, life insurance, investment, savings, inheritance. It's not hard. It'd be very easy to receive that kind of allowance, especially in your lifetime. Then, if a death event took place yesterday, then the amount that exceeds your £500,000 will be subject to 40% tax. And if you make gifts in your lifetime, that will also apply within the last 7 years. So this is where we've got to be reviewing your situation. Now, again, as the budget's changed, it's attacking pensions, attacking businesses, farmland. So it's much, much easier to fall into a trap of paying inheritance tax without planning in advance and planning early. So that's what inheritance tax is. Rightly or wrongly, it's a tax that it can be prevented, but with time and with planning. All right, that's the main thing.
Yeah.
So the best way I tell parents or families to plan is the ones making the gifts should be doing the planning for their loved ones. Don't wait for the loved ones to do the planning. It's too late. And most people think, oh, well, I'm not paying it. It's the loved ones that pay it. Well, actually, no, it is you. It's your estate. Even if you've passed away, until that estate is transferred to your loved ones, the tax comes through you. So it is really your duty to make sure that it's transferred as efficiently as possible to your loved ones without kicking that proverbial can down the road, that generationally now they're going to get taxed on the same assets, which can happen, or the hard work you have spent time to build for your children. As parents, it's a natural thing that we do. You don't want to go in sideways to another family who you may or may not like. So what do you want to do about it? How do you protect that? So generational wealth is important. And as business owners, we work hard because we love our families. And we sometimes we don't think of an exit strategy. But ultimately at some point you want to transfer that wealth, that legacy to your loved ones, to your family. How do you do that in a strategic way? And investors are not business owners necessarily, but sometimes investors think they are, and they don't plan for the long term, and that can be a problem. So an inheritance tax is a huge issue for investors.
Okay, thank you. And I'd like to move away just from that just a little bit, because for someone who probably wants to understand a bit more if this is new to them. So to begin with, the purpose or the main reason people gift, it's to reduce the size of their estates. Yeah. So that's not underneath their name. And that would help to manage inheritance tax. Yeah, to reduce it as much as possible, ideally. Obviously, if that includes gifting a property, that's where capital gains tax comes into place. Potentially, yeah. So if it's like a car or a large sum of cash, do they still face that type of tax? Not necessarily, because most cars are exempt from capital gains tax. It just depends on the asset that's being gifted, but most times it is land that's going to trigger it. Yes. So cash is exempt from capital gains tax, but it's not exempt from inheritance tax. So people have certain savings where capital gains tax could be exempt, certain ISAs and stuff like that, but it doesn't mean that it's exempt from inheritance tax. Okay. And do you mind? Sorry, I cut you off. No, I've even had someone say, well, because I haven't inherited, therefore I'm not due to pay tax. Like, so people just don't understand what inheritance tax is. They think because I'm not the one inheriting, so I don't have to pay the tax. It's not about you inheriting, it's about the one who's passed away. They're the ones liable to pay it, which could affect the one who is going to inherit, and that could be a big delay as well. Okay, thank you. I had the question in my mind and now it's gone. I don't know what's happened. It's me talking too much. I had it in my mind and now it's gone, Richard. It might come back to me. It'll come back to you. It might come back to me. But yeah, so yes, now I remember now. Thank you so much. That's all right. You need help. I wanted you to touch on the allowances just a little bit in regards to gifting. So yes, I mentioned about the nil rate band, which has been frozen to 2030 now, I think, which is 325,000. The residence allowance, which is an additional allowance, which is currently 175,000. That criteria is much more complicated. Keeping it simple, as long as you've owned a property that you've occupied at some point,
and you have children, which could be stepchildren, foster children, adopted children, grandchildren, then you pretty much are eligible. It can get more complicated, but I'll just keep it really simple. Then ultimately you should be eligible for that residence nil rate ban. The challenge with the residence nil rate ban, it needs to be claimed within 2 years of a death event taking place. It needs to be gifted directly to the beneficiary, so the planning has to be very meticulous. And if your wealth exceeds £2 million, then it's actually tapered and reduced. So your allowance could actually fall back to 325,000 if your wealth exceeds 2.175 million or plus, it depends if you're a couple. So for every pound that your wealth exceeds over £2 million, it will reduce by £2 your actual allowance. So once you hit 175,000, so if once you're 175,000 pounds over that £2 million, effectively you only have £325,000 allowance again. So you're now going to tax higher. So you've got to monitor that wealth and what you're doing with it. That's why it's important with this knowledge. If you're going to acquire new assets or want to make gifts, now you can be a bit more strategic, get the right advice to keep things as simple but also as efficient as possible. So those are the main allowances, shall we say. I'm not going to go to reliefs now, but in terms of inheritance tax allowances are the main ones. The other thing to be mindful of, if you are a widow or widower, you're still considered married. If you are married in general, then you can claim if your spouse passed away before you, then you can claim their allowance up to 100%, provided they've not made any gifts. Same thing if you're a widow, the same thing. All right, so that's most widows don't realise that they can claim their late spouse's allowances as well. So it potentially can have up to £1 million. And married couples can gift between each other unlimited, so we can utilise that type of planning for efficient inheritance tax with their wills specifically. So that's really the allowances in a nutshell, and people need to be mindful of that so that when they're writing their wills, getting their wills drafted. And wills are important. It's not just a bit of paper, it's actually a very strategic document. So it should be tailored to your specific situation, your life situation, not just a basic document. Yeah.
All right. Well, I think we've come to the end.
Yeah. Did I answer that question too much?
It's fine. It's fine.
Yeah.
But the thing is, if you want to know more, it's important to come to the workshop.
Yeah.
In the workshop, you'll be able to go more into depth, and you can ask questions as well. Obviously, we're not giving advice. We're just here to spread knowledge and educate you so you know. But you can ask questions, we'll be able to answer it as best as we can. It's just an opportunity for you to just learn, especially if you have a property, you own a house, and you have young children or just children, and you'd love to pass that house to them, to leave them with something, a legacy that you've worked hard for, and not for it to disappear into inheritance tax. So if you'd like to know more, please do attend a workshop. I promise it'll be great. It'll be interactive. You will gain a lot of value from it. And yeah, if you're here and you've come this far, then you must be interested, I'm assuming.
Yeah. And what I love about the workshops is the question and answer. People always have questions, and we love to answer them, and we can go in a lot more depth with the answers. So you get a lot of value out of that. So it's a small cost, it's a small investment of £47 for the workshop. It's going to last about 2 hours or so, but at least it's something you have for life. You can pass that down to your children, and they can watch it. Obviously, notwithstanding changes in the law, but as of today, it's relevant. So consider it, take action, don't delay.
All right.
All right.
All right. Thank you so much.
Cheers.
And see you next week.
All right. See ya.